And welcome to PaintCast, everybody. Good to have you here tonight. We're going to be working on some Cryx tonight, doing a little bit of airbrushing and a little bit of OSL with an airbrush. Right now, I know that you guys aren't seeing anything on your screen. That's because I am doing a live Google chat with Eric, and I am just getting his window queued up right now. So here in just a second, you are going to see his window and get a picture. So there you go. Let me just make that a little bit bigger for you so you guys can see what's going on. And we're just going to move this down a couple of spaces and get a few things going here. So Eric, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Looking forward to this.
You were telling me off air before we got started that a lot of your guys at your shop watched the first one of these videos that you did. How did it go for them?
They liked it. They enjoyed the airbrushing basics and stuff like that. The PowerPoint they felt was kind of impressive. They weren't expecting that.
Awesome.
But overall, like, the presentation's great and the information's good.
Well, cool. Well, we're trying a few new things out here tonight, guys. I've changed my lighting setup a little bit. I'm using a little bit more of a diffused lighting situation instead of a direct lighting situation. And I'm also I've put this black cloth down underneath me here, and I think it makes for a little bit more contrast for the eye and for you guys to follow what's going on here. So we'll see how this goes tonight, but I think it's going to turn out really well. For those of you who are joining us the first time, just wanted to run down on a couple things here. What I'm doing right now is a tutorial for Eric. And that, if you look in the upper left-hand corner of your screen there, you can see where it says Commission Paint Tutorial. When that icon is up, that means I have a client whose project I'm working on live. And sometimes the client will be on air with me, sometimes they won't. So tonight we have Eric on air with us, so my time is devoted to him right now and answering his questions and helping him, learn the things that he wants to learn about painting. When you see this icon up in the upper right-hand corner, personal work, that means I'm working on something of my own. And the biggest difference that it means to you guys who are viewing live is when I have one of these PaintCast videos going that's a tutorial, I'm not going to be fielding questions right away as they come up in chat because I'm taking my time to talk with Eric. However, I usually do take the last 10-15 minutes of my PaintCast to answer questions from chat. So feel free to put those questions up in chat. I'll respond to them if I get time as we're moving along here, but most likely it'll be at the end when I answer them. And then, of course, Eric, you have any questions, you just chime right up because you're not watching this on delay. You're live with me. So let's talk about airbrushing. This is your Asphyxius model that we were working on last week. And I got a lot of the purple. Well, we did all the purple last week, and we can see how that looks now. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I have airbrushed, I masked off the purple area, and have airbrushed this silver on as the base coat for the upper part of the body. These details here around his waist, I'll pick those out by brush when we get to that point. But I wanted to have this base coat done so we could talk about applying some OSL effects onto the model. Now, OSL, for those of you who are new to that term, stands for Object Source Lighting, okay? And I have, honestly, very mixed feelings about OSL, just to be honest with you, Eric. I'm not a big fan of it. I can do it, and I don't mind doing it, but I think if it's not done right, it ends up just detracting too much from the miniature. And then the other thing is when you're talking about getting an army on the table, 30 to 60 miniatures, doing OSL on all those miniatures can be a little tedious. So from an army painting perspective, it's not the best way to, or most efficient way to to get an army painted. But you know, when you got a miniature like this, like your Warcaster or a centerpiece figure, doing a little bit of OSL can do a lot to help that miniature stand out in the army. And as you put it, he's the evil mustache twisting villain of Cryx, so he needs to stand out a little bit. So I want to talk about for a second, Eric, just a little bit about OSL in general. I've got something I'm going to pop up on the screen here for you. Let me add this on here. Let's see. I know you guys can see this on chat right now, and that's fine. I don't mind that. So right now, everyone should be seeing this this screen that says creating OSL with an airbrush, a PaintCast info segment. It's just a couple of quick slides that I'm putting together. I put together just to address this from a quick informational standpoint. First thing to think about when you're going to apply OSL is you kind of want to get some of these basics down. And I want to talk about for a moment what is creating that illusion of the glow. So, Eric, simple question here. Does this blue orb here, does that look like it's glowing to you?
Yeah.
Right, right. Now, what is it about it that makes it look like it's glowing to you?
The illusion of light emitting from the center and then softening as it gets further out.
Right, right. You know, you've got a very bright, intense color in the center, and then kind of almost a sharp edge to that, and then how it fades out slowly as you move away. And this is set against a black background. So one of the biggest things that will give someone who's looking at your miniature the buy-in that OSL is happening is contrast. Okay, you got to have some contrast there. Doing a light blue glow on a white model probably isn't going to produce a lot of contrast to make that OSL effect look convincing enough. So you got to keep that in mind. You know, what's the base color of the model? What's the color of the glow effect that I'm trying to do? Okay, and that is one of the biggest things that adds to that illusion. The other thing that really adds to the illusion of the glowing, especially in this case, is you've got that very strong white center, and you've got a very hard delineation between the white and the blue. Okay, you've got a clear light source, and you've got a very clear glowing source. Okay, and so when you're doing OSL, that's kind of how you want to approach it. Okay, the point where the light is most intense is going to be a pure white color. The further you move away from that point, the more color, glowing type color, that OSL effect is going to have. So in this example where you have blue as your glowing orb here, white in the center, and the further it's moving away from that white, not only is this color becoming less intense, but it's also becoming more transparent. Okay, so that's kind of how you have to think about the basics of OSL. Okay, original object source lighting is when you get to the point of that object that's emitting the light, you're almost pure white, if not pure white. The further you move.
Sorry, is that pure white going to be there for almost any color, like how we're talking about doing a green? Does that still apply? Yeah,
for most colors it's going to apply. Now that white might have a tint of green to it, but for the most part it's going to be the white. Okay, and when we get to, I'm going to use a picture that you sent me to kind of illustrate this and explain this a little bit more. But you know, this third point that I have here, the closer the light source is to the object, the brighter you go with the color all the way to white. All right. Now these next 2 points here, pick a glow color. This is applied globally. Pick a light color. This is applied locally. What I mean by these two things is this image here of the glowing orb, the glow color I would call the blue. The light color I would call the white. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So like say you have a warcaster whose eyeballs you want to paint glowing. The eyeballs, for the most part, should be white. Okay?
Because they're the source of the light.
They're the source of the light, exactly. Now, if you want to get crazy and you know, give yourself a really bad headache, you could actually, on the edges of that eyeball, start to introduce some of the glowing color you want to use, and still keep.
It's like a pupil, so it's not the whole eye.
Right, yeah. But you know, really, that whole eyeball would be white, and then the glow on top of the cheeks, the glow along the bridge of the nose, under the eyebrows, that would be the color that you would use for the glowing. Okay. Now, let me think here where I was at with that. I was just something popped up in chat. They said you're coming in a little hard to hear, Eric. So if you want to turn your mic up a little bit, I'm hearing you just fine. I don't know if it's an audio thing on the other end.
Yeah, I'll try and fix it real quick.
Okay. And I know your mic is a little, you know, you're getting a little bit of feedback on your mic too, so that might be part of it. So I've got just a couple of quick recipes for you here, just real quick, okay? If you're wanting to make a fire glowing effect, you would start with a red, and then you would move up to an orange, to a yellow, and then to a white. However, when you think about how fire works, the hottest part of that flame is the center part of the flame, whereas the coolest part of the flame is the tips of the flame, right? So, yeah. So the tips would be that red color, that dark red color, and then as you move closer to where that source of the fire is coming from, you would get lighter and lighter and lighter, working up through orange, through yellow, and then to white. Now a power OSL you know, formula would be going from like a blue to a turquoise to a white, and that's kind of what we see here in this picture. You could do this with any color, with yellow, with purple, with red. It all works, you know, kind of the same principle. Now, this is kind of...
Find your base color, find your base lighter in.
Can you say that again? You kind of are breaking up a little bit.
So like you said, you find the brightest color for it, and then it's the white for the power, and then you soften it out, so it's getting darker and darker towards the end. You just have the raw blue.
Right, and don't confuse that term darker with necessarily applying a thicker layer of paint. It's just moving darker down the color wheel. Because when you're doing these OSL effects, you want to keep your paint fairly transparent.
Yeah, so it looks like the light is hitting a surface of some type. So like in our case, it would be like, I guess, the purple or the metal.
Right, right. Now, the other point I wanted to make too was object source lighting can create two light sources on a miniature. Okay, and that's where this technique can get really complicated. When I come back to your, well, actually, let me just stop this for a second and come back to your Cryx model here. So when we airbrushed this, we did a zenithal highlight where we were picking up the edges and along this top area here in a highlight. Now, if we were to, say, put a really strong OSL effect right here off of this little incense burner or whatever it is he has here, that would create another light source. So instead of having a light source above the model, you would now have a light source somewhat below the model. And so you would almost have to reverse highlight, you know, certain parts of the model to emphasize that. And for me, that is where this technique starts to lose it's how much I like doing it, because it starts to make painting the miniature very complicated. And not that I don't mind painting a complicated project, but you know, I'm thinking about what is it that I need to do to get a mini on the table as fast as I can. And so when you start having multiple light sources going off at the same time, it gets complicated. And so what I like to do instead is just keep my glow effects very localized, and I don't carry that glow out very far away from the original source, and I keep it, I usually don't treat it as a second light source on the model. I just treat it kind of as its own independent glowing object. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like, does all object source lighting have to be super intense like that? Like, I wasn't trying to like make this like the glow would be the most obvious. Well, I guess you can't really do this about the glow being the most obvious thing on the model or stand outish, but I was trying just to make it a bit step up from what you were referring to as your normal glow.
Right, and I think that what I'm going to show you how to do tonight is going to achieve that for you. I'm just kind of covering OSL from, you know, kind of a broad perspective here with that. So let me show this to you. Okay, so you've got now, you know, kind of a basic understanding of what we're talking about with OSL. Now, on the left here is how I would apply an OSL effect using a regular hand brush. And I'm not going to go over this in a lot of detail with you, but this will be on YouTube. You can refer back to it anytime, and, you know, feel free to you know, email me questions about it, or we can do another Google chat about it. But, you know, that's just kind of how I go about putting OSL on when it comes to a brush. One thing you'll notice doing OSL with a brush versus an airbrush, airbrush is a lot smaller. There's a lot fewer steps there. Okay, and basically when you're going to airbrush an OSL effect, you start by first applying your light color to the area of the glow. And by light color, I'm referring to what I'm referring to in this slide as this white here being the light color. Okay, so you first airbrush that on, and you create the map of the glow. Okay, so there's going to be a point where you're airbrushing where you're going to be airbrushing complete white, and then as you move away from that point, it's going to fade, and you're going to use those skills that we talked about last week to create a smooth gradient. So you have the white that kind of starts very, very thin and transparent on the edges, and the closer you get to your light source, the more intense it gets, leaving pure white in the middle of where that light source is. Then the next step is, in your case, we're going to be doing a green glow. I'm going to use Necrotite green. You would just simply glaze that green color over the white that you applied. And what that white that you applied does is it makes that color pop, and you get that OSL effect happening from that pop. And this works really well for creating a single light source glow with no additional reflective surfaces. So for the type of effect you're wanting to create here, this is what's, I think, going to work the best for you. Something like this, over here with applying it with a brush, is going to be a lot more labor intensive and take a lot more work. So let's look at this picture that you sent me. This is a Kraken that you sent to me, and or an image of a Kraken that you did, and you tried doing an OSL effect on these pictures. I mean, on the back side where the grill is, or whatever part of the model that is. And I got your permission before we went on air to do this, but I'm going to kind of critique this a little bit and talk about why this isn't necessarily an effective way to convince someone that this is glowing inside there. The first thing that stands out to me is if you look at what you've painted on these ribs here, it's lighter than it is within the ribs. And that's telling me that what's emitting the glow effect on this model are these ribs and not something within inside the model. If you're wanting to convey that image of glow, you would want the light parts to be in between the ribs, the recessed parts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I guess like I was kind of conflicting like when I was thinking about it, where people do metal highlights, they kind of top of them or whatever, I think I was just doing that. He flexed up thinking of what that would make the glow look like.
Right, and I can see, in looking at the picture and hearing that explanation, I can see that. But if you think about what we just talked about with the center of the source being the most intense part of the light, that's what you've done here, is you've created the light source on those ribs and not on the recessed inner part where that glow is actually originating from. And so you lose the depth, you lose the effect that the OSL is trying to achieve by doing that. And really that's the biggest thing. The other thing I think is kind of working against you here is there's not enough contrast in that blue. You know, there's just the very, very small hint of white just right across the top there and just right here a little bit. And I think you could have left a lot more white on there, and it would have done a good job of conveying that effect that you were looking for.
So one question quick.
Sure.
When I'm gonna go back and be redoing just that portion of the Kraken, I think, in the glow we were looking at. And do you think it would be easier to do the metal rib and then the glow in between them with the airbrush, or do you think it's better to do the whole back side of that model in the green glow and then pick out the ribs separately?
That's a good question. You would paint those ribs the same purple color, right?
No, I intended them for those to be like a metal.
Oh, a metal. Okay. You know, I probably would just, you know, paint those ribs the metal color, and then what I'm going to show you with the airbrushing tonight, I would do that, and then I would glaze your glowing color on there. I think that's what I would do.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so let's go back to the camera and close this and make that a little bigger so I can see what I'm doing. And here we go. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about the color we're going to use for the OSL effect. And let me get myself zoomed out here a little bit so it'll be a little easier for me to work. First, I want to talk about where I'm going to airbrush my map for the glowing color. Okay, so if you look at your model here, there's going to be a glowing source that's going to come from the bucket where his head goes here. Okay, there's going to be a glowing source that's going to come from in between these ribs. Okay, a glowing source that's going to come from underneath the rib cage right in here, and then a glowing source that's going to come from right here on the staff on both sides. Okay, now the color of the glow, or excuse me, the intensity of the glow is going to be most strong right up in here in this area, and then right up under here, and then same under in here, under his arm right in there. Okay, so when I airbrush, I'm going to airbrush right here inside this bucket. It's going to be fairly dark inside there, and then as I move out from there, I'll make my coat thinner and more transparent. Right in here, it's going to be fairly opaque white, and the further I move away from there, it'll be less white, less opaque rather, and then the same thing underneath here, and then the same thing on the eyeball right here. Very opaque white, and then the further I move away, it'll be more transparent. Now I'm not going to be coming.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that eye, like we talked about, is still going to have like a pupil and all that as was
correct.
Organic.
Yep, correct. In fact, well, let me back up. Do you want the eye to have the green glowing effect, or would you like to have like a dragon-colored eye with like an amber or an orange color going on with no OSL?
I actually think what you just described would be a lot better.
With the glow?
And not have the glow emitting from there, but
okay.
It would be like an organic, like dragon eye. I guess that'd be cool.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, something orange or something amber, I think, would go really well with as a nice complement to the rest of rest of the scheme. But we can cross that bridge when we get there, though. So I'll just focus then on the bucket here where the head's going to go, and then around the ribs there real quick. So
Awesome.
let me set this here and get myself ready for the paint. Now when I paint like this, well, let me back up. Normally, like last week when we talked, when I airbrush paint, I will thin my paints, about 50%, about 1:1. When I'm doing something really small and detailed like this, I'll actually thin my paints probably like 1:3. I go down quite far because I don't want to. I don't want the brush to be clogging on me. I want it to stay very thin and very translucent, the paint. And well, I don't know if I talked about this last week. I don't think we did. This is the color that I'm going to be using. Okay, it's a Createx Wicked Colors, and this color in particular is called Detail White. Okay, it is a fantastic color. I'm able to really get some very, very tight lines with this white when I thin it down, and that's what we need for a situation like this, because we're going to be getting into some pretty tight areas.
Do you find it superior to the like Vallejo Air whites and stuff like that?
I do. It's it really is I don't know what it is about it, but the first few times I used it, I was pretty excited because it was I was getting some awesome results. I've not used their other colors, mind you. I've only used this one for the white, but it's been doing great for me. Okay, I'm just going to show a little bit how I mix. And I'm going to want this color to be fairly thin, so as I pull it up the side of my cup there, I kind of look at how quickly those letters on the inside of the mixing cup show through the paint, and I kind of use that as my gauge to know when I've thinned it enough. Just going to a little more there. Okay, that looks pretty good there. Now I am using my airbrush with a 0.2 millimeter needle. Last week I was using one with a 0.3, so I'm going to be able to get a lot finer with my lines than I was able to last week. Let me show you here.
So yeah, it makes that really soft, thin line.
Yep. And that's what we're looking for. We want it to be soft. We want it to be thin, and really give us a lot of control over that paint flow. So I'm going to start right there in the head. Okay, so you can kind of see how far out I've gone there. Not very far. I'm keeping it very localized to the area right around where the head's going to sit. Let me just grab something here real fast. I need to adjust my focus just a little bit. Okay. And I'll start doing another layer now. It's a little thin. It's coming out a little faster than I would like, but that's okay. I can still work with it.
If you were trying to, let's say, get that ideally, and you like found that the paint was too thin, would you just add more paint, or would you change the PSI on the compressor?
I'd probably just dump the paint out of my cup and mix more paint, to be honest.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's probably about as intense as I want to go there. And then now I'm going to come up underneath the rib cage here. Alright, and you can see how that's coming along there. That's just getting the effect exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's actually what I was hoping for. It looks soft enough where it's not going to overpower everything else, but it's definitely noticeable at the top.
And like anything else with airbrushing, if you decide that it's not intense enough, you can always come back with a brush later to make it more intense if you want to. I'm going to kind of get these ribs here. Okay, and that's about as much airbrush work as I'm going to do on that. Really short, really simple, right?
Yeah.
So let me clean out my airbrush real fast, and then we'll move to the paintbrush and start doing some of that work now. But do you see how I'm creating the gradient? I'm using the white to map out where that glow is going to be.
Yeah, and then you're going to work out from there.
Well, I'm actually, yeah. I'll work out from there, but
well, yeah, I mean, like the white is all where the glow will be, and then you will work out from the center of the white.
Right, and then as I work out from the center of the white, the color of the glow will become more apparent. So, in the center, it will receive less coats than it will at the edges. Okay. That's the best part of the show right there, hearing me clean an airbrush, right? Entertainment.
It's all the details that matter, man.
I read on Facebook today, like today is the 15th anniversary, I think, of Gladiator. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm not much older than that movie, only by like 4 or 5 years.
Oh, geez, I feel like an old man now.
Yeah, people at my shop joke that I'm the baby of the group consistently. So I'm used to it.
I should have included tonight in the PaintCast some kind of reference to that. Are you not entertained?
Well, actually, that's perfect for this, in all honesty, but I am. It's a really good. I was just talking in our group chat with the guy I just posted, and just what helping the kids get ready for their first dance feels like. They don't want to paint asphyxious.
Oh, I love it. That's great, man. All right, I'm just getting my wet palette set up here. I thought I had one in there, or a palette sheet, but I didn't. So the first thing I'm going to do here is those spaces in between Asphyxius's ribs are a little tighter than I thought they were, and I don't want to run the risk of getting a spiderweb effect all over the model. So I'm going to just kind of paint those by hand real fast before I do the glow effect. But this will be good because I can show you, it's part of the process. This is how airbrushing works. You don't always get to paint all the spots with the airbrush that you want to paint. You got to kind of work around it and work with it a little bit. So I'm just mixing up a little bit of white here. Make sure I stay in camera. And I'm just kind of intensifying that white that's already in there. And I'll do the same thing on the other side here. And I'm going to make sure the underside of these ribs have a nice solid layer of white on them.
So you picked out the brush because it would be almost inconvenient to do it with the airbrush, and then you kind of like hard edge them with the brush as well?
Where I'm painting right now, and it might be kind of hard to see the detail on the camera, is I'm painting in between his ribs. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I meant. You did the inside of his rib with the brush because with the airbrush it was almost inconvenient to do.
Yeah, it was.
It would be too difficult.
Yeah, it was just a little tighter to get in there than I thought it would. Than I thought it was originally. So I'm just touching it up a bit with the brush. Yeah. Okay. So that's that'll work for that. Now the color that we're going to use, like I said, to create the actual glow effect is going to be P3 Necrotite Green. And then we're also going to use a little bit of glaze medium. Okay, and that's my my recipe right there. The glaze mix is about a well, that's actually the recipe for what I mix it with paint with. But this glaze medium has been thinned down with water. It's probably almost 10 parts water to 1 part glaze medium, because the glaze medium that I buy from Golden is very thick. It's almost like a gel. So you got to thin it down a little bit. So I put a drop of your base color on your wet palette, and then put 1 to 2 drops of the glaze medium on your wet palette, and then mix that color out. If you feel like it's too thick still or too opaque, just add a little more water to it. And as far as how thin you want it to be, when you start doing your glazing, let me show you on my hand here. I've got that little bit of white there. You can see how thin that is. It's just barely changing that color. Okay.
It's extremely.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to start on Asphyxius's bucket here for his head, and I'm going to start kind of pulling out to preserve the white that's in the center. And I'm not going to worry too much about an edge being there, you know, a painted edge being there, because you know, his skull is going to be covering a lot of this.
Yeah, but it seems to be a good area to actually demonstrate the technique itself.
Yeah. I just caught out of the corner of my eye, someone was asking if I archive my episodes on Twitch. I do not archive them on Twitch. I actually post them to YouTube when I'm done. So you'll be able to see this on YouTube in the next couple of days.
I'm going to link your channel in the chat real quick for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Tighten in there on the face a little bit so you can see that a little better.
It wasn't difficult to pop his head out of the socket, was it? Like I tried to like use as little glue as possible for everything, so that way if you had to disassemble something.
Yeah, no, it was fine, and in fact, he got totally pinned. His arms are pinned on. His waist is pinned to his. His torso is pinned to his waist. So he's solid now. He was a little concerned at first that he might not be able to hold up.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Usually I do pin my stuff and things like that, but I didn't know what you would want to like manipulate out of there. So.
Oh no, you're fine, man. You're fine. Don't worry about that. Okay, now I'm gonna hit this area right underneath here. Okay. I want the glow to be most intense right underneath here, so I'm going to, you know, pull the green away from that center part there. Just slowly building that glaze up just a little bit at a time. And the necrotite green might end up being too bright as far as contrast goes, so we might have to add a dot of like iosin green, or maybe even a little bit of gnarls green to the effect to really give it just a little bit more contrast. And I'm trying to keep this green out of the inside of his ribs there, because I don't want to disturb that white that's in there. And my little son has come and joined us tonight, guys. He's in the background.
It's awesome.
In the background cooing a bit. My wife's changing his diaper, so.
The joys of parenting.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And you can start to see how that's building up slowly and creating that glow. And this is, this is really all there is to it, Eric. It's just, slowly, patiently, building these layers up and trying to preserve that white that's been left behind.
Yeah, like you said, I could see myself doing this for, a centerpiece character or something like that, but when it comes to my 30 mechanical or paint that, I think I'm going to go through a quicker approach, like just making it just a more local, flat glow. Because there's only, like, eyes that I guess would glow on them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, getting the eyes to glow on them would be pretty cool.
Because I'm still trying to think of ways to differentiate the units. That way my opponent isn't for who's what.
Yeah.
And someone suggested I do maybe like a different color glow for each. I was thinking maybe doing the bases, like their arcings in a different color, but you never know.
I've seen that done before. That's pretty cool. On the Cephalex army that I'm painting, the way that I'm differentiating the units on theirs is I'm actually using different colors on the bases. One unit has bases with an accent color on it of yellow, one has an accent color of green, and one has an accent color of red. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I just based my first model like 3 weeks ago. I've just not been doing it for years, but I kind of wanted to get to start doing it. So I'm starting to pop the stuff off and get it on cork bases and things like that.
Good, good. So I've added a touch of Iosin green to my mix, and that Iosin green is going to go out here at the farthest edges, okay? And it's going to give just a little more contrast to the glowing effect.
And these will all be included on the paint rookie card, right?
Yep, yep. Yep, you will get all of that, and then of course, this video will be up there for you to refer back to any time. And then no one has taken advantage of this. I probably should be careful saying it, but the Google Chat, you get 3 hours of Google Chat with me after you get the mini back to answer any additional questions. And I haven't had anyone take me up on that yet, but that's part of what's included in what you paid for there.
Oh, I'll keep you to your word.
Good to hear, man. Good to hear. Okay, and you can see now the glow is starting to get a little more contrast to it. And you're starting to get more of that gradient green coming outside of it, where it's nice and white in the center, and then as you move away from the center, you're getting into that darker green there.
That's like exactly what I was hoping for.
Good, man. Good, good. That is what I like to hear. Now I'm just really lightly applying a full Iosin green on these edges. All right, and then I'm going to, on the inside of these ribs here, I'm going to add just a little bit of the glaze, the Necrotite glaze that I've made up, just in the ribs, but at the edges, okay? And that'll just to tie that in just a little bit more. It is a little too much contrast right now. I just want to soften that up just a little bit. All right. So so there you go. I'm going to let this dry, and touch it up a little bit more here in a bit, but you can really see that effect starting to come through. And if I zoom out here a little bit and you look at it from just a little bit farther away, it's definitely glowing.
And yeah, you are 100% right on the green.
Yeah, the green looks really good with the purple. It's a nice touch. So So for those of you who are in chat, we're nearing the end of the broadcast tonight. So if you have questions about airbrushing, painting, anything like that, go ahead and throw them up in chat, and I'll give those a couple of minutes to populate up there, and I can take some time to answer those. On the backpack, while people are putting their questions up, Eric, on the backpack, are you wanting any OSL happening here on the backpack?
Do you have the backpack there?
Yeah, you see it right there on the screen?
I flagged up a little bit, sorry.
No worries.
I was hoping to get some out of the actual tops, vents themselves.
Up here on the vents?
Yeah, like where that would the openings, like where
okay.
The smoke would actually come out of.
Okay.
And, here, I can't really tell if do you think, wish I could point it out, but on the circle backpack where the pipes stem from, does that inlay, do you think that inlay in the very center would have some of it? There, right there. Like, does that look like something? I can't really see it from here.
Yeah, we could put something in there.
Awesome.
Let me zoom in on that for you. Right there?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely do that. That's fine. I'm not going to do the vents yet because those vents are actually going to be painted a gold color, and then I'll put the OSL on top of that, and then I can come back and do that when I actually start doing the backpack. So
awesome.
yeah, so that'll work out for you. And then his head here, I was going to do some OSL right there on the little metal eyeball he's got.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So we'll, I need to base coat this. It's only been primed at this point, so I need to work on that one when we, on one of these next broadcasts. And then as far as the rest of Asphyxius goes, what I am envisioning as far as the rest of the color scheme goes here is the sensors here, the incense burners, whatever they are, I'm going to paint those gold. I will, in the dots of them, the vents there, I will put a drop of the necrotite green for some glow effect. The little circular pieces of chainmail ring armor that he has here, and then right here, those are going to be painted gold. He has got some kind of armor on his hips here, and that will be painted the same base coat as the pig iron. And then right here, like where there's the filigree on this back plate, we'll do that in gold. Here on the shoulders, the trim I'm going to do in gold. So there's going to be a bit of gold on them. And then of course this eyeball will do the eye that you're talking, the dragon amber coat eye that you're talking about. And yeah, that'll be that's kind of where I'm planning on taking this as I move forward with it. So
far, I mean, the one thing that it kind of blew my mind when you did it, we were talking about doing the purple the whole time through when we were emailing back and forth. And when we started to paint, you did the cloak purple. It never dawned on me to do the cloth purple.
Oh, really?
As soon as it hit me, like that you would do the armor like an actual metal, and then the cloth. Well, I was like, the veins are going in the strip tonight. That settles it. Like that was it.
You know what? You're right. We never did talk about where those colors were going to go. We just simply talked about what colors you wanted. So that's a great point, man.
Yeah, because one of the questions I just assumed that like everyone would have been my train of thought, and I'm like, all right, the main color is purple, the armor itself will be purple, but the cloth is really the most dominant part of the model. Like it's the most surface area, so that's the prime sense. And I was like, I never found a good cloth mine where the armor itself was purple, and this just fixed all the problems.
Well, there you go. What I'm doing here real quick is just adding a quick white dot to the rivets here on his rib cage, just to kind of sell the contrast, sell that lighting type effect. So so that those pop just a little bit there. And then also I want to try just glazing a little bit of white back over this, kind of towards the where the glow would be most intense. And this is, this is how it is sometimes with painting. It's just kind of a little bit of back and forth,
Yeah, I very rarely, like, my friends tell me, how a few of them, they work in very, confines of, I'm doing all the metal, I'm doing all the cloth, and I just couldn't do that. I bounce around a bit. Like, I get bored doing, one thing, I want to jump to something else.
Yeah.
And I usually end up rushing to try and get to the cool thing with as well, or a piece of the model itself. I was really excited when I looked at it.
Awesome. Yeah, that green and purple goes together really nice, man. That looks good. I'm excited for this. So, all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight, Eric, and we'll talk via email as far as when we're going to be on again and what the next steps are going to be. I'm going to just go through the chat here real fast and see what questions there were that popped up. And love to hear your feedback on some of these questions too, Eric, now that you're a pro, right? So,
oh yeah, is that how that works?
So let's see here. Maddie G2787 is asking, so would you use an airbrush for doing flesh on war beasts? Maddie, most definitely I would. Let me show you a couple of war beasts here real quick, if I may. First thing I want to show you is a troll mauler. This is the troll that I'm painting for Trevor's Christensen from Chain Attack. I'm painting his troll army. And this is the mauler that I'm working on for him. And this was, those flesh tones were almost entirely done with an airbrush. Getting in here into some of these areas where the muscles are. In fact, if you look at it from the top, you've got a lot of white, a lot of highlight going on. If you look at it from the bottom, there's a lot of shade going on. And that was, of course, all achieved, with the airbrush as far as blocking in those shadows and those highlights. So you can most definitely use an airbrush for painting war beasts because it works really, really well. Here's another example. This is a troll that I'm working on, another troll. Mulg, actually, for a client of mine, and this is in the more traditional, troll colors as far as the blues and stuff like that. And this was a lot of these flesh tones, shadows and highlights, were all obtained using an airbrush. So, yes, you can use it, and yes, it does work very well. In fact, let me set my mic down for a second and get another example to show you. Hold on a sec. I just had to go to my display case where I had a miniature for my own personal circle army stored. This is a Getter-X. Everyone's familiar with him. Or if you're not, ask your local circle player and he will introduce you to him. This was done with airbrush. Getting the black effect here on the nose. A lot of that was airbrushed. The shading underneath the deltoid there on the back. A lot of these highlights and these gradients were done with airbrush, and on a war beast in particular, I think you can really sell it because they're so organic looking, and the soft airbrush style I think really lends itself to war beasts. So there you go. That's I hope that answers your question, Maddie. Airbrushes are great for that. So.
Because also, if I could just say, like, when you look at muscle in real life, if you look at Cryx's, he seems to be pretty fit. The himself would gain that taunt color being kind of stretched out. And I feel, like you said, the softer hues of the airbrush really add to that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think really works for war beasts and airbrushing. So there you go. Next question that I'm seeing up here in chat, Maddie's asking again about airbrushes with beasts. It's kind of a follow-up question. Do you use the same basic zenithal techniques? Yes, you do use those same techniques. I will, block in those shadows, block in those highlights, and then go back with my brush, my hand brush, and clean those up and saturate those highlights a little more and darken those shades just a little bit more as well. Let's see here, looking back through the chat. New to airbrushing, what do you use to thin your paint and clean your airbrushes? This is from Maddie Havoc. I use, to thin my airbrushes, Vallejo airbrush thinner. I thin my paints, most paints, even the ones that say they're used for airbrushing, at about a 1:1 or 1:2 ratio. Sometimes I'll go as high as 1:3 or 1:4, depending on what I'm trying to achieve. As far as what I clean my airbrush with, I use Windex mixed with water at about a 1:1 ratio, and it works really well. Let's see here. Looking through, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I suppose that'll be it for the night. For those of you who are watching live, stick around. I'm going to take about a 5-minute break and then come back and talk about some basing techniques. I'm finishing up Chris's, the guy that I'm doing the Centurion and the P Iris and the Epic Cane for. His last PaintCast is going to be tonight, just finishing up some basics on basing. So stick around, and I will take some time to explain those things. But like I say, for now, I'm just going to take about a 5-minute break, and then I'll be back on. If you guys do have any questions, if you didn't happen to not get them up in chat on time, feel free to email me, redmodeling@gmail.com. And you can check me out on Facebook, facebook.com/redmodelingpainting. And you can also, of course, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/redmodelingpaint. And if you're interested in getting your own PaintCast done, make sure to check me out on Facebook or email, and I can definitely hook you up with that. Eric, you got any other questions tonight for now?
No, man. Great cast again. This was the one I was really looking forward when we had this idea. So
awesome.
OSL tutorial, and that's the hype for me. So thank you.
You're welcome, man. Glad I can be of help with that. And we're going to do some of this too on DeathJack when that piece comes in from the parts replacement store. So we'll
hold on. You got one more question just now in the chat there.
Let me scroll down. Can you apply gore blood splatter with an airbrush? Drolath is asking that. You can, and it basically involves using either paint that is in a brush and spraying the airbrush over that, so it sprays it out in a droplet-like pattern, or leaving your paint a little thick. That might be something for a future PaintCast though, because that's it's a little bit more of an advanced technique. I think if you're wanting to create blood splatter, you're better off using just a paintbrush and a paintbrush bristles against a paintbrush handle in that type of a manner. I think you'll get a much better effect. So anyway, and there's one more there. I will go ahead and answer. I'll go ahead and fill that one. Do you use a consistent PSI for the airbrush, or do you vary it? Yes, I'm lazy, so I leave my airbrush set at 35 psi, 33 psi, and just use the trigger of my airbrush to manipulate the paint flow for the effect that I want to achieve. So check out JS Twitch. Check out my PaintCast from last week, which was on airbrushing, and I talk about that quite a bit. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot, Eric. I will be contacting you via email in the next day or two, and we'll work out some details. For the rest of you in chat, just hang tight. I'm going to pause for a bit, take a break, and then come back with some Signar work. And any questions that I might have missed, I'm not going to clear the chat, so if you want to keep asking them, put them up there, and I'll grab them when I come back. So Eric, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you on the flip side, man.
All right, man. Take it easy.
All right.
Soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.